Hello, my name is Cynthia Wang and I'm a fourth-year student at Miami University. Today, I will be presenting my paper that I co-authored with Christopher R. Wolfe, Fine Print and the Law, Assessing the Comprehensibility of Online Legal Documents. I was inspired to pursue this endeavor due to my strong interest in both psychology and the law. In particular, I am interested in questions and practical applications of the law that can be answered by computation and psychology. Over the past couple of years, I've noticed that we encounter legal documents everywhere in our daily lives, from every time we open an app on our cell phones and when we sign waivers in a click to agree and accept terms and conditions. I often wonder how frequently we pause and take the time to read legal documents in their entirety. Online legal documents, such as waivers and agreements, have fundamental implications and important consequences, and I believe that it's incredibly salient for everyday people to understand them and know what they're getting into every time they sign or waive something. The goal of this project was to assess the comprehensibility of online legal documents. In order to do this, I collected 80 legal waivers and user and privacy agreements that I searched for and collected from the internet. Once I gathered these, I decided to remove extraneous advertisements, images, graphics, and unnecessary text like logos. And once these were removed, I was able to utilize the web-based discourse technology CoMatrix to analyze the online legal documents. CoMatrix is an online tool that lets you paste text and yields over 100 measures of multiple characteristics and qualities relevant to comprehension, grounded in concepts of language and readability and text easeability. Our hypotheses centered around 4 psycholinguistic variables. Here are 3 of the 4 variables that we focused on. The first is narrativity. A text is narrative when it tells a story that uses nouns like events or places and things that are familiar to the reader. The next variable we focused on is syntactic simplicity, or the degree to which sentences in the text contain fewer words and use simpler syntactic structures that are easier for readers to process. The third variable we looked into was readability. To assess readability, CoMatrix, the web-based tool, assigns a Flesch-Kincaid grade level to text, and this refers to the grade level that is appropriate for the text. For example, an 8th grade, 10th grade, or 12th grade reading level. The fourth psycholinguistic variable that we looked at was gist inference scores, or GIS. GIS is a calculated composite variable that assesses the likelihood that readers are able to form inferences about the text's bottom line meanings, or meaning if they understand the gist of what a text is trying to say. To calculate a gist inference score, we use these 6 variables in this formula right here. Texts that are high in GIS indicate that readers are more likely to form inferences about them, and this suggests that these texts are easier for people to comprehend. After analyzing the text through CoMatrix, I was able to find the means and standard deviations for these waivers and privacy agreements. For the agreements on the second column to the right, then you can see that the narrativity z-score was about 0.57, which places it in the 41st percentile. For the syntactic simplicity of the agreements, they scored around the 69.8th percentile. Over to the column on the left with the waivers, the narrativity z-score was negative 0.48, which places it at about the 33rd percentile. For syntactic simplicity for the waivers, we found that the score of 0.04 translated to the 66.5th percentile. Overall, these percentiles and z-scores tell us that these texts scored pretty low on readability, syntactic simplicity, and narrativity. And as you can see from the table, the gist inference scores, or GIS, were also pretty low, which indicates that readers are not as likely to be able to form inferences about their bottom line meanings. Ideally, you would want factors like readability and syntactic simplicity and narrativity to be high, so these percentages were very telling. The online waivers and agreements scored low on readability, syntactic simplicity, and narrativity. On the other hand, there were also no compensatory factors to offset these variables such as GIS. Normally, we would like to focus on important variables that can help balance these low scores for the 3 variables mentioned before. But unfortunately, the GIS scores were also pretty low, so there was nothing much compensating for these low scores. This indicates that the legal texts, like the documents, like the waivers and agreements, are difficult for everyday readers to comprehend. I wanted to take this research a step further and see if I could take these texts and make my own version of them to make them easier for everyday people to understand. I revised the waivers by hand, and for each text, I created my own document containing the same information, and I revised the language in the waivers. I then took all the waivers that I made a revision of, and I used Comatrix to analyze them. In the second column, you can see the comparison mean for readability and syntactic simplicity that I created with my revised texts. As you can see, I was able to significantly improve the readability and syntactic simplicity. The readability for my revised text scored a 12.49 on Flesch-Kincaid grade level, which means that my texts on average for the waivers were suitable for a senior in high school to read. I would like to extend my revision of these texts to more documents like the privacy and user agreements that I used for the original project. And my future research will include a web-based behavioral experiment that examines the effects of revising online legal texts on people's understanding and decision-making. I will use the 3 variables like narrativity, readability, and syntactic simplicity, and also others, including GIS. In the future, I would also like to have online texts with high and low GIS scores, and I want to compare them in a laboratory setting. In the future, I would like to have participants decide if they agree or disagree to the legal waivers and agreements after reading both texts, the original waivers and agreements, as well as my own that I have revised. In conclusion, the online legal documents assessed are difficult for everyday readers to comprehend. Many people click away fundamental rights on the basis of largely incomprehensible legal texts. Fortunately, we have theoretical and computational tools today that can facilitate the revision of legal documents to be more effective in informing people about important rights they are currently waiving without their real and true informed consent. I think this is very fitting for this year's theme of computation for the social good. And my sincerest hope is that I can contribute to work in the future that allows people from all backgrounds and of all reading levels to be able to better understand very important legal texts. Thank you.